friends are calling you out to play. Come on, we'll make you feel right at home. Good day, Vail. Good day, Vail. Let's see what lies in store for you. There's so many things to see and do. Summer, winter, spring or fall. You're home in the Rockies as it all. So gear up, get ready to plan your day. The ideas are brewing, you're on your way. The fun is waiting outside your door. Good day, Vail. Good day, Vail.
Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Good Day Vail. My name is Cece Zach, and I'm so excited to bring to you Chris Anthony. Yes, the Chris Anthony, the skier, the Hall of Fame inductee for Colorado snow sports, the guide, the European guide, the filmmaker, and the founder of the Chris Anthony Youth Project. Please stay tuned because his story is so inspirational about how to reinvent yourself and continually give back to the sport that created who he is today. So come right back. This is the Good Day Vail episode with Chris Anthony.
Good day, Vail. Good day, Vail.
Hi, and welcome back to Good Day Vail. I am so excited to bring to you today Chris Anthony and all of his glory, and we get the chance to spend time with him and learn about who he is, what makes him tick, and the phenomenal impact he has had on the sport of skiing and with youth. So with that, Chris, one of the things that I like to ask our viewers is, why Vail? What brought you to Vail? How long have you been here? And why do you stay here?
I've been here a very long time. I don't want to totally date myself, but I was first originally brought here on a sort of a scholarship and invitation from Ski Club Vail, which is the local race program for youth here. And that put me, originally I was driving over from Summit County.
Okay.
And then eventually I got to move in with a family right in Vail Village, stay with them, and then attended Battle Mountain High School. And then we would be released at 12 noon every day and go train. So on Gold Peak. It was a very good program, very good development, and that's what got me here. And then eventually my parents ended up moving their life and their business here by my senior year of high school.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And obviously that's where the first start of your love for skiing happened.
Well, my love for skiing and the start of skiing started long before that in Crested Butte, because my parents met in Crested Butte, and they had to move to Denver because it was a little rough back then, but they continued up on the weekends to go up to the mountains and work at ski areas and make it possible for us to ski, for them to ski, and they wanted their kids to ski really quickly so that they could enjoy skiing.
How many siblings do you have?
So I just have a sister.
Okay.
And so both my parents basically would go up and work at the ski resorts on the weekend, first Crested Butte, then Copper, and then basically the ski area raised my sister and I.
And so if I fast forward, you were awarded, you were inducted into the Hall of Fame for Colorado snow sports. And so tell us a little bit about how you got there. What was the journey? You told us about the beginning of how you started skiing, but I mean, there's so much time in between.
Yeah.
Just give us a little snapshot of everything that you've done.
Well, that was a magical evening, obviously, to be recognized by your peers at such a high level, especially here in the state. The journey there, I mean, it's been very, it's huge. I mean, I've touched every aspect of this sport, and none of it was by design. This has all been very organic, and I think by just pure passion. But to be there and inducted amongst and look out at the audience, at literally the people that mentored me, the people that I looked up to, and thought, how could I ever be at their level? And
you're giving me goosebumps, so keep going. This is awesome.
It's choking me up. So, like, literally, specifically, I looked out, and there was a gentleman by the name of Andy Mill, who was a 1976 Olympian, 80 Olympian, one of the coolest, most amazing individuals that was on the U.S. ski team. There was everything about him was cool. As a little young male skier, looking up at this guy, that was the guy I wanted to be. He was
he was there honoring you.
Well, he was naturally he has been inducted into all the halls of fame, as well as an Olympian and everything. And he was the guy that showed up at my house in Denver, because it's a long story how he met my parents, but he ended up doing, my dad was a jeweler, and my dad made a ring for Andy when he married Chris Everett.
Yep.
And so Andy showed up at our house in Denver, and if you can imagine, just be a little kid like, there's Andy Mill.
Yeah.
There's Andy Mill. And he gave me his poles, his downhill poles, which at the time were like way too big. I mean, they were like this, but I used those poles, and there's pictures of me sitting in the start house with poles this big, totally against what I should be doing, but to have that idol and have him integrated into my life, and then to have him being on one of the selection committees that would induct me into the Hall of Fame. That was a special night.
That is just, you're giving me goosebumps.
But it's because of that mentorship, right?
Yeah.
Which is also why I do everything else with the youth.
Well, and to your point, everything else, and we're going to get into the youth, but you've been a skier. Your goals as a young child, correct me if I'm wrong, was that you wanted to be the best skier. And that, whether it was the Olympics, but tell us about, competing and then how you got involved with Warren Miller.
Okay, so the natural journey that most young alpine ski racers you want to be an Olympian. You want to be the Michaela Schifrin, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, as a kid, that's what you aspire to. And of course, Andy, for example, going back to him, I would go to these ski camps at Copper in the summer, and Andy was actually one of the coaches, as well as he was there training. And like one day, he went out. I saw that he went out on his bike and he rode to Leadville, and so I got out on a little bike and tried to do what he was doing. And so I took those steps that I thought that's what makes the best the best. So I want to follow all those good procedures. Andy also said one thing that was so impactful, and that was that he said, if you set a goal for yourself, do everything possible to work towards that goal. And he goes, but you may not reach that goal, but the journey that it's going to take you on is going to be something very spectacular. So my goal was to be the best skier in the world. Obviously, I didn't make that goal, but what it did was open up so many other doors, and that I aspired to get through each one. And how can I deliver on each one of those doors that I'm going through? So that's what's led to this journey that's basically to the Hall of Fame and stuff like that.
I mean, these doors that you're talking about, I mean, after your competing years, you got asked to ski in more Miller films, right? So tell us a little bit about that journey.
So one of the definitely most depressing times for a young athlete, and it's hard to believe that this stuff happens, even for a retiring veteran athlete, is when you're basically told that you're being put out to pasture, that you're too old. And it's the weirdest thing in the world, but that happened to me, and I was only 20 years old. Now, at the time, it seemed like I was so old, but now I think back of it, you're so young. But I was basically told that I had to make a decision, and the one side of it was that to go to school. I ended up going to the University of Colorado. But the thing was, I was a DF student, so I was not not getting anywhere academically. I literally at one point was told by a counselor that I should be prepared to literally go pick up trash.
Oh,
and I was
no child should ever hear that.
Yeah, it's brutal. And I was dyslexic. I was not smart. I was the DF student. My ACT scores were terrible. My SAT scores were terrible. But thankfully, a counselor showed up at Battle Mountain from the University of Colorado, and the principal had the foresight to go, when the counselor asked, who in your school shows potential but doesn't on the paper look like they deserve a chance? And that was me. So thankfully, that counselor found a way for me to go to the University of Colorado as an academically probationary scholarship athlete.
Okay.
So I went in, but at the same time, I was still ski racing, and I also made the junior national cycling team. So
A total underachiever on the athlete side of things. Oh my goodness, who cares about academics?
but those are a long shot, right? Like,
Yeah.
and here's this opportunity. All of a sudden, something that was never going to happen. Me going to college, and so do I push all that other stuff aside and go to CU?
Yeah.
And so that's what I did, and I couldn't get but they couldn't get the competition bug out of me, especially skiing. And so I started going and competing in every different thing that could possibly pop up competition-wise. And there was a really fun event back then called the Hardcore Skier Challenge, which the competitor, the skier, had to do a slalom, a giant slalom, a mogul course, a jump, and it was a race to the bottom.
Oh my God, I'm exhausted listening to this.
It was awesome. And one of my idols actually was in one of the events, and we were sort of going head to head. And at the end of the day, he beat me, but he asked what I was doing over the next few weeks. And I said, well, I'm at school at CU. And he goes, do you think you can take some time off, because we need another athlete to go to Europe with us and film? And I was like, are you kidding? Who? Like what? And it turned out it was Warren Miller. And that's how that door opened.
So I want you to hold on to that thought, because we have to take a station break. And please stay tuned, because the rest of Chris's story is so heartwarming about the lessons that he learned from a child all the way to today, and how he gives back to the community and helps us live our best lives. So stay tuned. This is Cece Zach and Good Day Vail with Chris Anthony. We'll be right back.
Good day, Vail. Good day, Vail.
Welcome back to Good Day Vail. I'm Cece Zach, and here with me today in the house is Chris Anthony. And where we just left off, Chris was going to start talking about how he entered into his current role of filmmaking. But it all started because you started skiing for Warren Miller. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so that's a dream come true.
Yeah.
Obviously, especially during my time growing up, the famous filmmaker Warren Miller grew up going to the films every year and watching them and wishing that someday maybe I could be in one. And Warren himself would be there. And so that's how I grew up with the films. And all of a sudden I received this invitation to go ski in one by one of my mentors. And thankfully it was one of the most healthy mentors you could have, a guy by the name of Mike Farney. He was a prodigy on the US ski team, one of the most amazing skiers that I've ever seen. And what I got to go to Europe with Mike Farney being the elder athlete, and I was the rookie. And he was the perfect person to go with, because he was the one that kept me humble. And he said, if you want to continue on with these experiences, then his first words were, you need to learn how to carry the tripod and do the hard work. It's not about you being some star or something. You need to participate on the production side, on the helping side. And he goes, the skiing's going to be the easiest part.
And did you ever think at that point that you would even be behind a camera? No, you would be in front of the camera.
No, I was just hoping that I would get invited to. I was already
ski?
thinking
Yeah.
on the first time that I got to go on a trip with Warren Miller, I was already going, how do I get to do this again, even though I was there? Like, I want to do whatever possible so I can come back.
Yeah.
And so basically with those values and those principles that Mike set for me, that lasted 28 years. I got asked back 28 years in a row.
No one ever does anything for 28 years
Yeah,
anymore.
and the other reason I got asked back a lot was because I was also willing to make a complete and total fool of myself. Not being, everybody wants to be represented, especially the skiers, as somebody like so cool that they're doing something so rad.
Yeah.
I was willing to do whatever it took. You make fun of me, do do whatever you can, send me to weird places, which actually turned out to be a blessing because I got to go on some amazing adventures with the company. And what else that did too was that first trip, was during a period of time where I came back and I was searching for, well, what's the rest of my life have in stand for me? And I ended up getting an internship with a film company out of Aspen called Freewheeling Films. And they took me as their grunt, as one of their, just their grunts on a shoot to go shoot Budweiser commercials with the Clydesdales. And it was awesome because we traveled all up and down the West Coast with the Clydesdales. And
what was your role with them at the time?
I literally, everything from taking the trash out, getting coffee, to being yelled at all the time, move a camera over there, pick something up there. I was the grunt.
So that's where you got your start then,
Yes. And then,
all right, so then let's fast forward to your movie today.
Well, so the magic part of that is that on that journey with this film company, we ended up in LA where I was sitting at a table with a bunch of agents and everything, and and I was just the grunt. I was just sitting at the end of the table, and somebody brought it up. They go, yeah, Chris down there is a professional skier, and he went on a Warren Miller shoot. So if they all knew who Warren Miller was, they were like, tell us about that.
Yeah.
And I told them the story about just what previously happened in France. And they told me to go home and write a script, a screenplay. And simultaneously, one of my closest friends had died. So I ended up writing this story that I called Ian's Edge at the time. And it took me quite a while to write it. And after I got done, I didn't know what to do with it, so I applied to USC Film School. And with the letters from Warren Miller Entertainment and from a few people in LA that were at that meeting, I got into the graduate film program. And what I realized there was that I was just almost in competition with my professors because they're basically Hollywood people that aren't working, so they go teach. Yeah. That sounds terrible, but it's the truth. And so I ended up getting an internship for Michael Douglas at Paramount Studios.
Okay.
And so I went there and I really learned the back side of the production and the filmmaking. And while I was there was another familiar name that will pop up. She reached out to me and said, Chris, I'm gonna start a TV show, a ski magazine TV show, Brenda Buglioni, who has had this show, Snow Motion, for, I don't even know now, 40 years or what. And she said, can you come help us and be a producer on it? And she thought that I knew more than what I did, but I said, sure, of course. So I had to kind of learn on the fly the editing, the story building, and everything. So I was helping Brenda build segments for that show.
Wow, this is amazing. This is such a phenomenal example of you opening doors.
Yeah.
You are.
You got to go through them though.
This is true.
Yeah.
So you go through this door, and then all of a sudden now you film Mission Mountain Mangart, which is just phenomenal. Yeah. Tell us about it being full circle of everything that you've done in your life.
So if you skip way ahead then to the film that you currently did, Mission Mount Mangart, what happened with that is that I stumbled across a story in a part of Italy that I have been able to go to because of the filmmaking, because of the competition, because of everything, and stumbled across one individual that brought forward a bit of history about the 10th Mountain Division that had never been documented. I turned around, brought that bit of history back to the current company, Warren Miller Entertainment, and said, somebody needs to tell this story.
Yeah.
Nobody was interested. It kind of forced me into a corner that that I needed to do it on my own. So then I took
which you did, everything. And you were able to, from scratch, all on your own, create this phenomenal movie. And I think that the key piece for me in this movie is, and I've seen it, I've been blessed, I was in the audience when you showed it here at the Westin earlier this winter, is that it's mind-boggling, your background and what you created. It's beautiful, and I don't want to tell the viewers too much about it because I want them to see it on their own. So tell us a little bit about how you're distributing that. How can people see it today?
Well, so what I had to do to make the film was be creative on every level, like the business side of it, to the production side of it, to how I'm distributing it. So I produced the film under my foundation. So of course I have my foundation for kids, which is a 501c.
And this is the Chris Anthony Youth Project for our viewers.
Yeah. So my foundation for kids, Chris Anthony Youth Project. One category underneath that is building educational programming. So with that excuse, in other words, I was able to go out and at least reach out to people and go, I'm going to build an educational historical documentary about the 10th Mountain Division. Will you make a donation? And with every donation that came in, I sort of was able to take one more step in the production side of it. That combined with I think people's passion behind it, that were willing to donate their time or effort or some of the footage that I was able to get from, I used 2 cameramen that charged me so little because they were in love with the story as well. But there's going down the Warren Miller, the man's playbook, basically trading out the whole way, like trade outs, bartering and everything. And what can I give you that you'll help me do this? And so that's how I did this entire film. It was literally bartering, scratching, clawing, and donations.
And in the spirit, what I've heard now is that now that you're showing it, you are donating all of the money to the Chris Anthony Youth Project. So briefly tell our viewers about that, because to me, that's who you are today, and it's a phenomenal story.
So technically, the foundation, the Youth Project, owns the film.
Okay.
So I myself can't profit from it. Since the foundation paid for the production at a very discounted rate, any money that comes into it goes to the Youth Project. So we cover expenses, and then any excess goes to my programs through the Youth Project.
So tell our viewers about the Youth Project.
Yeah. So the Youth Project has 4 parts. One, you've learned about building educational programming. The most important part, well, 2 important parts, going into the classroom with mentoring programs. And I have a whole menu of topics that the teachers pick from that I come into the classroom and speak to the kids about, and then get their brains going. And I sort of can have an advantage over maybe the teachers in a way, is that I get to come in as a sort of a star, a professional athlete that tells them a great story through film and interaction. And
what are the other 2 components?
So then there's bridging at-risk and underserved communities to experiential educational opportunities. And that's where the money really goes to. So I have to pay for those trips, pay for those opportunities. And those can be expensive, of course. So that's where the money goes to. So the 3rd part's building educational programming. And then the 4th part, my sister really kind of runs, and that's snow, avalanche, and youth. Snow education, avalanche education for youth, snow sciences for youth.
God, I wish I had that when I was younger.
Yeah.
Chris, I hate to cut this off because you and I could talk forever. I find your background fascinating, and for all of you viewers, Chris's story is so inspirational. He has reinvented himself throughout his entire career, and all he's looking for is to create access for underserved children to find their way in life, just like people helped him find his way in life. So with that, this was Good Day Vail, Chris Anthony episode, and I'm Cece Zach. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
On your way, the fun is waiting outside your